Um, we're very, it's been mentioned a number of times, and both Stefan and I were sitting in the audience and being very proud of the fact that we could understand some Finnish, because I think in the Kaufman colleagues' presentation, he mentioned Watson, and we both picked it up. And then he mentioned cognitive. So you've probably got the same word for cognitive in Finnish as you've got in English. I also picked up the word for cafe. So, the word, so it's going well in terms of Finnish. What I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, I'll cover a little bit of what Stefan just mentioned in terms of the complexity that healthcare is facing as a driving pressure for how IBM has developed Watson. And I'll then take you through a few, I'll take you through the background about what it actually is, how it works, and how we're now deploying it in various different instances. And then I'll show you, I've got a couple of videos which show you a little bit more about what it actually looks like in one of its uses. And then I've got some case studies. My background is in the pharmaceutical industry predominantly, so you'll see, you might see some references to industry or to life sciences, and that's purely because of my pharma background. But everything I'm going to talk about is equally applicable to pharmaceutical, to healthcare across the spectrum. So things are just getting more complicated, just like Stefan said. I think a number of people have talked about patient centricity, the personalization of medicine. It's actually all of healthcare is moving from a process, the black and white picture that Stefan just showed of a doctor, patient goes to doctor takes the history, comes out with a prescription, patient accesses services or products. That's a linear process. What you've got here is a sensibility now coming within people who are working within healthcare that it's really complicated. If you really want to help patients, and if you really want to focus on long-term outcomes, you've got to take everything into account. I mean, you've got to talk about health clubs. It's not just about the hospital. It's about the devices. It's about insurance. It's the whole thing. It's becoming very, very complicated, as everyone is aware. And this is one of the main drivers behind what we've been doing with data, with big data, and then driving into how we can mine the data and get insights that people can then relate to. Patients themselves, or users of healthcare products and services, are mobilizing. And it's very easy for large communities of patients, of carers, of people who use products and services to come together and to start mobilizing and putting together their insights and their views. I think Patients Like Me has been running a head-to-head trial of some medicines, and they've made recommendations on which ones patients should take and which ones they shouldn't for a particular indication. That's a really big deal, that you've got that kind of rigor coming in through these informal networks. You've got doctors mobilizing as well with things like doximity, and then you've got disease-specific kinds of communities. All of these entities are generating data. Every box you saw on the previous slide, it's all generating data. Now, it's traditionally we've seen all that data as just being noise, but what you saw in Stefan's presentation is that it's all usable. The point about congestive heart failure, if you go into the data and really focus in, there's a lot of richness in that data that can point to very relevant issues that the user may be facing. So how do we get there? Well, we need to take into account what patients want. So you've got to, patients are becoming much more vocal, much better informed. There needs to be a focus on outcomes. They're asking, are you able to deliver the result that you promised? It's no longer about the doctor just sitting at the desk and writing the prescription. There are demands that the patient can now make of the doctor. This point around personalization. We've been talking about personalization of medicine for decades, but it can actually happen now with the smartphone and those communities you saw on the previous slide. You can see how patients can really start saying, well, that doesn't work for me. It might have worked for this other person, but I want something for me. And then whatever product or service you have, the engagement and making sure that the user stays on that treatment, carries on using that service so that they get the right kind of outcome. That's really important. And again, patients are starting to say, well, you've got to make it engaging for me. Why do I have to stay engaged with you? Now, all of this is driving pressures into this whole space that, and again, this is the slide that Stefan showed. What's happening? Why did it happen? What could happen? And what action should I take? The central part here is around cognitive. Now, why is cognitive important? Because it can digest all of the what's happening, and that's all just the data that's coming in. And I think what everyone here wants to know is how is that data converted into insight? Because that's what these 2 points are. How can you move from facts about a person into interesting decisions and questions that person should be asking and that whoever's working on their healthcare should be able to address? And that's what cognitive computing is all about. So, coming to Watson. If we were to break down, I mean, Watson, just to give you a little bit of background as to why IBM has developed something like this. Roughly every 10 years, IBM picks up a challenge. And it's got to be a big challenge. It's got to be something that everybody can get behind. And in the 90s, the challenge was, IBM was known for its hardware, its computing. Can we create a computer that could beat a chess master, right? At chess, and that's where Blue Gene came from, and the famous experiment with Garry Kasparov, and Blue Gene won. Now, the reason for the challenge wasn't just to beat Garry Kasparov; it was actually to show and to push our own engineers and our developers to the envelope of their abilities. We felt that a machine that needed to be built that could do the millions and hundreds of millions of calculations required to beat the chess master, so that that same kind of capability could be applied in other areas. And we used Blue Gene then for protein folding and to start generating some of the insights on the large biochemical data that was being generated. So the reason for the challenge is to push technological development. And the Garry Kasparov one is the most famous of the previous ones. After that, IBM started to think about what the next big challenge could be. And that's where cognitive came from. The challenge was, can a computer win at a game show, basically? So in the way that chess was a game and we had something to win there, we wanted to build a computer that could understand how humans think, how humans process information, what the context is for that information, and understand a question enough to throw an answer back. Now, that's a really big deal. It's not a fact search. It's about understanding points of reference and idioms in language. And that's where we developed Watson to compete in an American game show called Jeopardy! Now, I don't know, I mean, it's an American game show, so it's unlikely. Do people know about Jeopardy! Here? Right? Okay, that is weird, actually. But anyway, we'll go into that later. So you know that in Jeopardy! The format of the game is such that the contestant is given an answer, and they have to come up with the question. Now, it was specifically Jeopardy! That IBM developed Watson. You know, that was the challenge. Can we win at Jeopardy! Because there's so much you have to understand. To just give you an example of what IBM's been able to build, the English phrase of noses run, right, and feet smell. Everyone knows what it means. If your nose is running, you've got a cold, feet are smelling, you know, put some new socks on, right? But how do you teach a computer that your nose isn't actually coming off your face and charging out of the door, right? or that your feet aren't growing nasal cavities and are able to understand odor. You know, what exactly do you have to do? That is the challenge. And it's if a computer can understand the difference and that insight, you've really got something powerful on your hands, because in Stefan's slide where he showed the human and machine interface, that's what we need. It's not about just transcription. It's not about me saying something and then that being transcribed. It's about comprehension. And that's the big difference between what Watson does and what something like Google does. When you go to, if you're Googling something, everyone knows what you're actually doing is you've got a question in your head, and there are certain facts you need to bring together to answer that question, right? That's what Googling is. You go, you Google, find out a fact, find out another fact, bring the two together, you've got your insight, okay? So you never ask Google questions. You actually ask Google for facts. You send it off, searches, comes back. With Watson, you've got this point. It understands natural language, okay? Now, you can say that that is the case with something like Siri, right? You can ask Siri a question, and it comes back with an answer. That's true, it does. But that's all it does. It comes back with a particular answer. What Watson has been doing is we've been teaching it. And this is the IBM philosophy for artificial intelligence, is you can have learning algorithms, and that's great, and they can pick up insight, and you can have natural language processing. What you need to be doing is focusing those algorithms and focusing that natural language processing onto a particular knowledge area, onto a space for human beings, and that's where you can then start getting something that can generate generate hypotheses and evaluate which of those hypotheses are actually of value. And that's a big, big step forward, right? So understanding what I'm saying within the context of what I'm saying, applying what I'm saying to a body of knowledge, such as medicine, and then evaluating the answers that I'm coming back with. That's pretty much what a doctor does, right? Take the history, get the facts, generate hypotheses, maybe ask for more facts, then come back with a diagnosis, okay? And that's what we've been doing, is we've been applying that capability. By the way, Watson won at Jeopardy, right? If you've seen the video, it's pretty impressive. I'd suggest have a look at it on YouTube. The way that Jeopardy champions are measured is by the number of shows that they come on, because they keep on going on to the one until they lose, or the amount of money they win. So there were two champions on Jeopardy, one who had been on this massive run of shows, 20 or 30 shows, and the other one who had won a huge amount of cash. And Watson beat them both. I think they had $2,000 or $3,000, or maybe $5,000, and Watson won $76,000. So I think that they were both taken aback, and it's, you know, when you start thinking about the implications of something like that, it becomes quite big. And we heard a little bit about the data confidentiality and who owns data. All those questions start to come up. But nevertheless, Watson won. So we then started applying Watson to two main areas. As soon as Jeopardy was aired, we started getting calls from doctors, actually, about how how Watson could be applied in medicine, and that's what we've been training it to do. And so you've got a number of organizations who are going after artificial intelligence. You've got Google that recently bought DeepMind. There's a number of others that are coming up. And it's all open, right? I mean, nobody actually knows what the right way of going about this is. We believe teaching it to be really good at one particular thing is where humans will generate the most value from AI. And that's what we've been doing. So I think, right, now what I'm going to show you now is just a very short video, so a couple of minutes, on how we've trained it for medicine and how it actually has been working.
Dr. Mark Norton, a clinical oncologist, is preparing to see a patient. He logs into the electronic medical record, and instead of spending time trying to find relevant information, he uses the IBM Watson Oncology Diagnosis and Treatment Advisor. He pushes the Ask Watson button, and Watson analyzes the patient data against tens of thousands of documents from its vast body of medical literature. Dr. Norton starts with the Case Information tab, where Watson has pulled out the relevant information, as well as suggestions for additional information to gather. Moving to the Test Options tab, he sees tests that Watson suggests that he consider ordering. He presses the Evidence button to see the reasons why Watson suggested the first test. Then he drills down further into a specific reference that supports the suggestion. Once the results of the tests come in, Dr. Norton presses the Treatment Options tab to see a panel of suggested confidence-scored treatments. He also sees a list of clinical trials to consider. Again, he reviews the supporting documentation by pushing the Evidence button. Dr. Norton has new information to add to the case, so he pushes the blue Watson avatar on the bottom and speaks directly into the microphone. He makes sure that his words have been transcribed correctly and submits the new information. Watson returns a revised set of confidence-scored treatment suggestions that take the new information into account. It also updates the list of clinical trials to consider. Shifting gears from Dr. Gordon's role to that of a hospital or health plan administrator, the advisor provides a customizable dashboard showing key performance indicators like where the advisor is being used, how it's performing, and what information sources are most useful. The administrator can drill down into the data more specifically to get more details, such as performance over different time spans, metrics on specific types of cancer, or in this case, a narrower geographic area. This is just one of the many areas that Watson's cognitive capabilities can be applied to help people live and work in better ways.
Will it move on to the other slide if I... Oh, there we are, okay. So that's what an interface for Watson that we've been working on looks like. And you can see that it brings together a lot of the elements that have been touched on during the day. I've just got a number of cases to go through, so I'll just go through them very quickly. We've been applying this and in lots of different areas, and Stefan talked about some that have been applied, some instances of applying Watson to healthcare settings in Sweden. Beyond those, we've gone into looking at clinical trials and trying to identify and going through bodies of literature. Now, the key, as Stefan said in his talk, there are different components of Watson, and one of the most important ones that's generating a lot of value is the ability to understand context and content written as text. And that's it's able to the noses run and feet smell point. If you can apply that to scientific papers, you can start to pull out, you can start to mine unstructured data, you can start to mine text for facts, you can start to mine text for insights. It can understand how particular terms are related to other terms. Now, the question is, well, how does it understand all that? You have to train it, right? Watson isn't a software program that you load into onto some hardware and it just starts running. It needs your experts. It needs doctors to be sitting down and training it. It's just like inducting a new person to your department, right? They need to understand what your department does. You'll train them by asking questions. You have conversations with them about what the way that the department approaches particular problems. That's what you have to do with Watson. And that's why this is such a massive step. You're not programming. This is when we work with our partners on deploying Watson, the first question we ask is the experts who know how the thing that Watson is supposed to do, those experts need to be available to train the Watson on how it's going to be used. So that's what these examples are about. Here, it found some new disease pathways in scientific literature, in PubMed, I think it was. In this one, it's identified a few new candidates for testing in the labs, again through PubMed. Over here, it was looking at the adverse event reporting and toxicology reports and trying to marry the two to see where there may be points that haven't been raised before. And in this one, Janssen wanted to find out whether the right combination of medicines was being applied and how they could optimize what they were doing. So there's a huge, and these are just 4 cases, right? I mean, there are vast numbers of applications of Watson's different components now. And it really is, well, I mean, I'm from IBM, so maybe you'd expect me to say that. However, the way that it works, the way that people interact with it, the way it's forcing and pushing enterprises and organizations to cross their internal organizational barriers shows that it's approaching problems through the systems thinking. It's pushing organizations to the next level. And we think that that's a huge capability that it brings. And we think it's going to change. It really will change everything. And I've got another short video. Me saying that it's going to change everything is good, well, I think. But what you actually need to hear is what some doctors have been saying. And I don't know if you noticed Memorial Sloan Kettering on the previous video. We've been working with them, and that interface that you saw was part of the advisor that we built for oncology with Memorial Sloan Kettering. I've now got a video where they talk about how it's worked and what the impact has been, which should have played before that one. See, I've built it up. So should I hit the next button? Okay, I'm going to have to mime. No, it should be on the stick.
It said unable to open the file or something like that.
Oh, did it say that? Okay, well, maybe we'll be able to play it a bit later. But we've collaborated with Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is one of the leading oncology centers in the US. And we've been working with them for the past three or 4 years. And Watson has been digesting medical records. It's been digesting whatever data and evidence it could get from them, and has built up a huge corpus of knowledge. And that's very important to know about Watson as well, that you've got to have all the data available for Watson. The most important thing about the Memorial Sloan Kettering collaboration, though, is that their oncologists actually sat and trained Watson in the way that Memorial Sloan Kettering treats oncology. Okay, every hospital, every specialist has a particular approach, and Memorial Sloan Kettering believe that their approach is very effective for the patients who come to them, and they wanted to export that capability. And so what they've done is they've captured all that capability in this oncology advisor that uses Watson, and that is now being exported to other hospitals, and they're being able to use it in their oncology departments. That was the video that we were going to show, but that's it. So, Kitos.